Hey everyone, me Kevin here. I am so excited to be live with Mark, the CEO of Arcimoto, a fun utility vehicle company which also trades on public markets under ticker symbol FUV. This is a stock that has skyrocketed 1,500% in the last 12 months. Biden certainly helped push that along since November. There's been so much excitement for EVs, but we got to give most of the credit, absolutely most of the credit, to the company itself because they create amazing products, super exciting products, and I'm really excited to learn more about this company. So welcome aboard, Mark. Introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about fun utility vehicles.
Kevin, thank you so much for having me on the program. Really great to meet you and tell the story of Arcimoto. So again, I'm the founder and CEO of Arcimoto. I've actually been at this for 13 years and change. Started in 2007, and the goal originally was to create the right platform for daily transportation. So I went looking for an electric vehicle in 2007, and I had a pretty simple set of requirements. It needed to be affordable because I wanted something that if I adopted it, everybody could. It needed to be lightweight. I was looking for something much lighter than a full-size car, and it had to be a high-quality thing that would solve my everyday trips, like going to work and going to the grocery store. And I just couldn't find it. And so that was what really began this quest that ultimately culminated in the fun utility vehicle, which is, initially, the whole mission of the company is all about sustainable transportation, catalyzing the shift to a sustainable transportation system. But what we found over and over and over is that people would get out of our vehicles and say, that's the most fun I've ever had in a vehicle. And so we ultimately decided to lead with the fun factor, and that's how FUV came about.
It really does look fun because you're out there. It's almost like you're on a motorcycle because it's a tricycle basically is kind of the frame of it, and then you've got the battery here in the middle of it. I guess that makes sense. It's almost like a motorcycle that can't tip over, right? What do you say when people compare you potentially to that?
Well, it is three wheels makes it a motorcycle. It is a motorcycle class platform, but having a third wheel, particularly by doing two wheels in front, makes it a very stable platform. It has dual motor front wheel drive. So you're actually getting pulled down the road instead of pushed. Makes for a really compelling driving experience. And then you got to think about this as both a platform, which is really the underlying electromechanical machine. And then we have a few different products that we build on top of that very same platform. So the FUV, the fun utility vehicle, it's open. You're in the world. You're not like, it's just a very engaging experience to be in the middle of your vehicle, to have the really incredible visibility of the world around you, be able to interact with people on the road. So it gives you a lot of that feel that you would have on a bike. But then you also have dual seat belts for each passenger. You've got a roof overhead. It gives you a much greater feeling of security than you would have on a typical motorcycle.
And now, what do you say to people who compare, because we're playing the reel here, and what do you say to folks who look at it and wonder how can I be safe in this? There are no signs.
How you slice it, you're at a big disadvantage if you go toe to toe with a 4,000-pound machine. That being said, versus other vehicles in its category, in the motorcycle category, you have a much more stable platform. You have a much more visible platform. So you sit up in the Arcimoto at about the height of a crossover SUV, which means that you can see other participants on the road, and it's much easier for others to see you. And then you also have something that is very maneuverable. So if you have to make an evasive action, it's much easier to do that than if you're on a typical two-wheeler. In terms of the actual structure, it's got a roof that passes the 216A automotive roof crush standard. It's got seat belts, and we've tested all the seat belt anchorages. But as you say, there are certain events, like if you don't have, and this is, by the way, the platform, there's nothing about the platform itself that prevents it from being used for a fully embodied vehicle. But our initial product, the FUV, doesn't come with doors. We can get optional half doors, and we've got full side enclosure on the roadmap. But there are certainly certain circumstances, and you're very aware of this, by the way, when you drive it, that there is nothing between you and the rest of the world on the sides. But we believe that for a small form motorcycle class vehicle, it offers really compelling safety advantages over what's typical in the category. And so, safety, I see safety ultimately as a spectrum that runs all the way from, a scooter with nothing around you to a 7-passenger, 5,000-pound SUV made by, Volvo or Tesla. And where any individual person lands on that safety spectrum in terms of adoption, that's going to that will let them make those particular choices. But what I have found, and this is, I've been forbidden from birth from riding a two-wheeled motorcycle by my mom, and she absolutely loves her Arcimoto and says that for her, it makes her feel more safe because she can see the world around her. She knows exactly where her vehicle is, and she adjusts how she drives based on just the inherent characteristics of the product.
A lot of motorcyclists, well, I suppose because this is as well, two-wheel motorcyclists say that as well with like Harleys, for example. Hey, I feel like I can actually predict what's happening more because I can see so much more. So that's interesting that, she told you, hey, no motorcycles, two-wheel versions. But this, she has almost that similar experience as somebody who would consider driving a motorcycle. So do you get a lot of, Harley buyers, for example, or like two-wheel motorcycle buyers who look at your product as well?
We definitely find that there is that motorcycle set who says, this is, this makes me feel much more stable on the road. If you've ever dumped a two-wheeled bike, particularly if you've got a partner on board, that's pretty much the end of the road as far as riding a two-wheeler. And so there is that set of cyclists who say, I'm getting older. I understand mortality now, and I want something that's going to be stable. I want something, with age comes a cage, as the old expression goes. But to be able to still have that feeling of being in the world is still very compelling.
Gotcha. No, I love that. I think that's very cool. So tell me, there's in your product reel, there were many use examples here. It looked like there were young folks having fun, people using it for city transportation, Uber maybe using it as like an emergency response vehicle. Is there a particular market you're trying to hit, like more congested areas, or is this really just, hey, we can adapt to anything, whatever you want, we'll set it up for you?
Well, you think about Arcimoto, you look at it and you go, well, that's a super niche product, right? But the niche that it goes after actually comprises about 80% of the passenger vehicle trips on the road, right?
Oh, wow.
This is a vehicle that matches how the wide market actually uses cars. Now, obviously, there are places where it's very cold, where you're going to want, full enclosed. You want actually to have your own, fully environmentally sealed cocoon. But in terms of the capabilities of carrying two big people or one person and a lot of stuff, 100 miles on a charge, that actually matches the usage pattern for cars by the vast majority of car trips. And so we have identified certain little slices, right? The daily driver of the fun utility vehicle, the vacation rental market, last mile delivery, which is what the Deliverator is all about. The ability to maneuver very quickly through traffic and park anywhere. Those are advantages that the rapid responder has in terms of getting emergency responders to incident sites more quickly. So what we're ultimately going after is the patterns of transportation that we're going after little slices initially, but ultimately we see this, and particularly as we look to the long term and the shift to autonomous vehicles and vehicle sharing, that this becomes, we think, an ideal platform for the vast majority of those sort of robo-taxi type trips.
Oh, well, this is interesting because you kind of hit the nail on the head there. Initially, when you think of this product, you can't help but think this is very niche, that it's maybe entertainment driven, that hey, my wife Lauren has a van, I got a sedan or an SUV, and this might be like the third wheel, so to speak. And it has three wheels, which is I don't know. I guess there's an interesting
Well,
I mean, is that not something that folks might think, that it would be the third kind of product in the house?
Yeah, or it's your sort of secondary vehicle, right? That's kind of the mentality. Like,
Okay.
oh, I've got my primary car, and then I get this other thing
Right.
that I use to do my everyday trips. And then you go, wait a minute,
Okay.
my primary car has been sitting rusting in my driveway undriven for the last 3 weeks because I haven't had a trip that's required that vehicle to be fully utilized. I've been using my FUV all the time because it's super fun. I mean, it here at my house, we use it all the time for getting groceries, going out on little errands. The actual cars just don't get usage. And so if you think about the American driveway's got 2 to 3 cars in it. If you just say, well, I'm going to replace one of my vehicles in my fleet with that thing, and then you find out, well, why do I even have that car in the first place when I only need it once a month or once every couple of weeks? And obviously that will vary widely between different patterns, right? So if you're carrying 3 kids around on a regular basis, then the Arcimoto is not going to become your primary solution for that problem. But usually there are just a ton of vehicles out there that get driven by one person only for 99% of their trips.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's almost as if you think a family needs these 2 large cars, and most of the time the thing's just sitting around doing nothing. It's almost like maybe the primary car should be something like this, that's small and economical. It gets you to Starbucks and back. It gets you to the post office and back, or the grocery store and back. And then what more do you really need? If you're going to go on a trip, long trip with a family or something, fine, great, take the van. But this could actually be the primary driver. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, or rent one. I mean, at the point we've moved past over the last 10 years, we now have apps that let us very easily use cars that we want on a very fractional basis when we need them. So if you need the pickup truck to go get a yard of dirt, you check one out for an afternoon. If you want to go skiing for the weekend up in the mountains, you rent an SUV for that 3-day trip. But then you're not paying insurance, depreciation, car payment for having to have the ability to drive that one particular SUV every single day when you're only using it once a month.
Wow, that is just a completely different way of looking at it. I mean, you're so right. I mean, how often have I actually had my car full of stuff that I'm lugging things around, and I'm thinking to myself, geez, anytime I need to get a big order from Lowe's, I end up renting a U-Haul anyway, loaded up with drywall. I'm not putting that on top of my car. And even when you have a pickup truck, I mean, unless you have an 8-foot bed, drywall is a pain in the butt to move around. Just rent a car when you're doing those unique things, when you're doing your move or you're going on a vacation. That's interesting. I've never thought about it that way.
Well,
and you just mentioned something that, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and car rental used to be a huge hassle, right? You fill out 8 forms in triplicate, got to go to a special location. But as we now have more shared fleets and app-based solutions where you can just kind of go, a Turo or a Getaround or a rideshare programs at Zipcar in various cities, suddenly that becomes a much lower. There's these things are catalysts to be able to get you into the tool that you need when you need it. There's a saying that's a quote that I'll always remember, which is, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole, right? So when you want to be able to use the tool you want at the time to solve the problem that you've got. And that's one of the reasons why we look at Arcimoto as really being kind of at the confluence of a bunch of different trends of mobility. Sure, product number one it's got sort of ATV styling. It's got this tube and open frame look. But the reason we did that is we wanted to get into market on the most capital efficient trajectory we could. But the platform itself, the way that we have architected the base platform, we see as a solution to just a big chunk of the mobility problem.
Huh. Now, you mentioned a very interesting word that is all the rage in electric vehicles, especially the stock market. You said autonomous. Can you speak to that?
The A word. Yes. Well, and look, you look at rideshare, at Uber, Lyft, taxis. 85% of those trips are one passenger in the back seat, right? So if you think about the direction that the big automotive world has been talking about autonomy, it's 5 to 7, maybe even more passenger vehicles, big SUV size robotaxis that in the end will be carrying one person around on their trips. And so, frankly, we think that approach is sort of barking up the wrong tree. And what the way that we see ourselves in this next generation world is really, again, it comes back to the platform. We are building an electromechanical, very lightweight, very efficient, very fun platform that doesn't take up a lot of space on the road. And so there are dozens of companies out there that are developing sensors and software and all of the brains to autonomously drive vehicles down the road. Our plan is to build the platforms that those solutions sit upon, because I think there's going to be there is a clear challenge for any of those sensor and software stack makers, which is what's their path to market, right?
Right.
The major OEMs are going to have their own solutions. Tesla's doing a fully vertically integrated solution from raw materials to finished robotaxis. But there are a bunch of different companies out there with very compelling technology solutions that are not going to have a clear path to market. And that's where we think Arcimoto is going to be an ideal partner.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, what's stopping y'all from just, instead of slapping on it's the West Coast door, I guess, the half door, bringing it all the way up to the top and having a concealed unit? Is there an air conditioning in this thing?
There is air conditioning is an option that we plan down the road. Basically, full HVAC is on the drawing board. Same thing with full side enclosure. It really, this just comes down to it is ultimately a function of capital efficiency. That is, we have been a very lean organization from day one. When you think of number of dollars spent from a napkin sketch to a production electric vehicle rolling off the line, in Arcimoto's case, we spent a grand total of $42 million between those 2 points, which is a tiny fraction of what is typical in the industry that companies burn to get to get production vehicle number 1 on the road. And when you think about doors, actually, there's one of my buddies who was a Ford engineer for a long time and then became a tech entrepreneur and venture capitalist. He said, a car is more than a door with a bunch of other stuff strapped to it, because closures are actually really hard. And you saw when you saw the Model X that Tesla did, that it was actually that door. It was the Falcon Wing door that set them back about 18 months.
Oh my gosh.
So when I was making games, I saw my former life as a game developer. The sort of game development philosophy I came to was get the core gameplay right. What is the movement of the character, how the character interacts with the world, and then start by building the minimum amount of game around that possible so that you can get it into the market and actually get people using it and get people enjoying the experience. And so, there is a giant market called California, immediately to our south. It's the 5th largest economy on the planet, where having an open, super fun vehicle experience is an incredibly viable market solution. And that's really, it's true of the Sun Belt all the way around the planet. But even places that you wouldn't normally think would be awesome places to ride Arcimotos on. New York City is absolutely fantastic for driving the fun utility vehicle. We've been there in rain or shine, winter or summer, and it's just a fantastic experience. So the roof does a very good job of keeping the weather off. If you're wearing clothing that lets you be outside, then you're going to stay warm in the vehicle.
I think that's awesome. Okay, so I mean I'm learning so much, and forgive me if I bring up any initial biases. I really want to explore this so much. So it looks like, depending on how you configure it, and this costs somewhere between $17,900 and maybe $26,000. I read in Bloomberg that 90 to 95% of all of your parts are shared between all of the different vehicles that you produce on the same sort of platform, the same battery platform there. What are like the margins like then? Are these very profitable once you get to scale? What's it looking like?
Well, so these are, we are still very early days. And what we are focused on with the vast majority of the enterprise today is getting to volume production. So we just entered into an agreement to purchase a new manufacturing space that's going to increase our manufacturing footprint by more than 5x. And we've teamed up with an outfit called Monroe and Associates out in Detroit to help plan for mass production. If you've heard of Sandy Monroe, he's been making the rounds on all kinds of next gen vehicle circuits, because it's just that is what they do is volume production, primarily of vehicles, but ultimately of a huge range of products. And so the plan is to get the price down so that the starting price is around 11,900 at scale production. And we think that when we're at that point, that we'll have an average selling price of around 15K, and that we'll be selling with 20% plus gross margins. So the trick right now is to really do the work on product refinement for scale production, so that we have, and we're going through all of the growing pains that new electric vehicle companies go through, which is, you just end up having, and particularly because of the pandemic, we've had the pandemic has affected us, but it's also affected every single one of our suppliers to a greater or lesser extent. We've had supplier quality issues, we've had product assembly issues, and so really getting our arms around all of that early learning as we prepare to go to much higher production scale, and then making sure that we're hitting a target price that really drives a much wider potential for adoption. Those are the hurdles that are in front of us right now.
Got it. So it's really this ramping phase. This is something that you frequently hear, even like Elon Musk talk about how difficult it is to get to scale and volume production. That making a prototype, like I don't know, just picking one randomly, like a Nikola semi-truck, making a prototype is maybe a little easier than actually getting to scale. So do you then share that same kind of struggle with Elon Musk, even at Tesla, where he's complaining that, hey, it takes 1.5 to 2 to sometimes 3 years just to get one factory fully to scale? Speak to that maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the stage that we're at right now. He's called it production hell. And then there is, delivery hell right behind that. So we teamed up with DHL to get rid of the delivery hell problem. But the production, the wailing and the gnashing of teeth on production scaling is what we're doing right now. I think that, the difference, there are obviously many similarities with that challenge between Arcimoto and Tesla. Probably the big difference is that we are building something that is a much simpler product than what Tesla builds. So, Tesla is building a full-size car, multiple full-size cars, and aiming for much steeper production scaling ramps. What we're aiming to do is get to that sort of 50,000 units per year capability within our own manufacturing footprint, and really dial that in so that we can sort of copy paste that design into factory footprints all over the planet. So ultimately we see the potential for this platform in the many hundreds of thousands of units per year globally. But the goal right now is to really dial in the replicable model that will make that next stage of scaling possible.
Got it. So, yeah, right now it looks like you're delivering to California, Florida, and I think there was one other state there. Well, is that because right now, is that mostly because of manufacturing constraints that you're producing maybe out of one space I mean, what's the capacity of that right now?
Well, so yeah, we're definitely producing at low volume today, and that's driven by a few different factors. It's not so much we think that the building that we are building out of right now, we call it the AMP, the Arcimoto manufacturing plant. We think the ultimate capacity for that space is on the order of 5,000 units per year, but we're building at a much lower volume than that today. And that's driven in part by we've had some significant supply chain glitches. Probably the biggest one was the plastics body panels of the vehicle, but it's also certain components within the electronics. And then we've also run into things that have been production and quality issues that we've had to remedy, and that you don't want to make 1,000 copies of the same mistake. So what you want to do is you want to solve the problems. It's sort of the stitch in time saves nine, or solve the problem while it's still a very small problem before you start really cranking units out the door. And then when it comes to the market areas that we're operating in, that really has mostly to do with building the other parts of the business, which are it's not just about manufacturing vehicles. We got to take care of those vehicles over the vehicle lifetime, and that means building a winning service team in every market that we're going into. And so scaling service, scaling delivery, and then scaling production, and at the same time making sure we've got the order flow to move through the process. Those are all it's a fairly complex machine, the building of the machines.
No kidding. Yeah. I mean, it seems like so many parts. Yeah. I mean, customer service, sales. I'm sure people have questions when they check out online. They got to have somebody walk them through it. I mean, there's so much. Are you planning then, like Tesla, this sort of delivery, or I should say, dealership list model, basically, where it's just online, then you order it and DHL eventually delivers it, hopefully in the span of a couple of weeks in the future?
Exactly. Yeah. So we don't have a dealership model. We don't even have a company store model. So when you want to actually experience an Arcimoto in market, we're envisioning that we're going to have rental operations, and those could be anything from sort of a destination vehicle rental. We've got our first rental franchise open now in Key West. We'll be opening rental stores in the early part of this year in other markets. And so whether it is sort of a rental store destination or some kind of a vehicle ride sharing program. So we have a few different models that we are looking at that will get people in the driver's seat, because it really is, it's experiencing the fun utility vehicle that makes people go, I got to have one of these in my driveway.
Yeah, I was just thinking, what you just mentioned is so interesting, because I'm looking at these right here. So this is called Wheel Fun Rentals. Wheel Fun Rentals.
Nice.
And basically these are in all the vacation destinations that you go to, and they're just the pedal things, right? You bike them on the boardwalk and things like that. Is this kind of almost a way of you thinking maybe Trojan horsing your product, where people like try your product when they're on vacation? When people on vacation, they have usually people experience euphoria on vacation anyway, then they go back home to work, and maybe they can almost take a piece of vacation with them by buying a fun utility vehicle. Like, I really enjoyed renting that in Key West. Yep. I want to have one at home.
You got it. I like that. I like that. The Trojan horse. The reason we ultimately came to the rental model was that when you drive this thing, people ask you over and over and over. They say, people will pull up to you at a stoplight and say, roll down the window and go, that looks like a lot of fun. Where can I rent that? Where can I try that out? And so that was, we would say for about the first 50 times, I would just say, no, it's not for rent. We build these. And then eventually I was like, maybe it was actually a member of our team said, we got to rent these things because we can actually generate recurring revenue. The craziest model for product development is to build something and only sell it once. So if you can rent it out, get recurring revenue from the vehicle, where that customer initial experience is actually a profit center rather than a big expense sink on marketing or retail or a dealership margin, that's a big win for the business.
Yeah. I mean, that is brilliant. Essentially, yeah. I mean, the best advertising is no advertising because advertising is expensive, I think. So why not do the this is a little bit of a Tesla slam, but why not do the Tesla model of, hey, let's crank production as fast as possible. If things aren't perfect, we'll fix it in the future. We'll fine tune it in the future. Tesla's had issues with their electric systems back in 2017. I mean, their autonomous system, there were lots of issues with it. A lot of issues with panel gaps, paint issues, and it's kind of just like, yeah, let's get as many of them out here as possible, and over time we'll just fix. Is there a balance there where at some point you say we just got to get to volume and then we'll fix things as they come up? Or
Absolutely.
I don't know.
I think it is a balancing issue for sure, and I think over this last year we had aspirations to in 2020 we wanted to put out way more units than we put on the road, but we also had so some of the issues were, how do you bring up that symphony of suppliers at the same time to meet your volume needs? And the fact was that in the middle of a pandemic, I mean, we had suppliers shut down for stretches of time. We ourselves shut down for stretches of time. And I think the only silver lining there is just that we got a lot more longitudinal data on a smaller number of vehicles. But there is definitely a balancing act between because each of those vehicles that we put into the market, one, we have pre-order customers that some have been waiting for years to get their Arcimotos. We have definitely the need to continue to show real progress towards scale to our investors and to the market as a whole. But I think we've also got to be really thoughtful about not creating a giant problem for us down the road. Each of our vehicles that goes out the door is essentially all of them are marketing vehicles. Right. Every one of our customers ends up getting peppered by all the same questions that we do every day that we drive the Arcimoto down the street. And so, the more that we get out into the world, that helps, sort of multiply our sales channel as we go to scale. So I'm definitely feel the pressure from sort of both directions, which is, we want to have a very measured approach to the market. We want to make sure that we're always delivering a very robust product to our customers to the extent that it's possible. And at the same time, we've got to keep turning up the dial on production to build that pathway to real scale.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting spot that you're in as now you're a public company, so you've got analysts bugging y'all. You've got almost a $1 billion market cap here. You're trying to develop scale at the same time. You've got customers who are probably calling in going, hey, where's my FUV? I want to get going. I mean, how do you balance this all? That sounds stressful, man.
Daily meditation and yoga is probably the best way to handle it. Just keeping the body and mind fit to the extent possible, because as it's ratcheted up, it's just the level of demand on every member of the team has gone up commensurately. And so, we've got to make sure that we are, and again, this is all just, it's about building a long-term durable company solving a giant problem. We're the mission of catalyzing the shift to a sustainable transportation system. I mean, to make a meaningful impact on that problem, we have to be building hundreds and hundreds of thousands of vehicles every year for markets all around the world. That's the end game. And so, how do we maintain sanity and stay, keep making meaningful progress day in, day out? A lot of that just comes down to, making sure that we are keeping the entire team aligned in terms of just the basic values and mission of the company, and that we are sort of preserving health and sanity for the long haul, because it's a big climb.
What's your climb look like? I mean, you want to get to hundreds of thousands of vehicles per year. You want to get global, multiple different manufacturing facilities. What time frame are we talking? I mean, you've been building this for 13 years. It almost seems like you started right around the same time as Elon started with, the first Roadster. Tell me a little bit about your future vision in terms of time frame.
Yeah. So, and again, that's sort of, we've had it's like a hockey stick turn.
I think I lost
First vehicle into production.
There we go.
And then, from there, we've articulated a goal of getting to 50,000 units a year within a couple of years, which is that's a big jump from where we are today. And you can kind of think of it like a computer microprocessor, right? What we are defining right now is the core that builds 50,000 units a year. And then if you think about chips today, a lot of the ways that they make chips go faster or do more things is add cores. You can get the 8-core chip or the 16-core chip or the 32-core chip, and that just lets you do more and more and more in parallel. And so once we dial in that 50,000 unit per year core, that's when we can say, okay, let's copy paste that core all over the world. And I think that probably the biggest difference between the scaling, that out years scaling factor between Arcimoto and say Tesla, is that Tesla is developing multiple fairly distinct products in their product family. They've got everything from a Roadster, a sedan, an SUV, a truck, to a semi. Right? Those are each of them very, very different products. What Arcimoto is looking to do is to really take one platform to scale that hits at least for this, sort of fun utility vehicle platform, and then continue to differentiate the product offerings on that platform while still sharing, 90% of the same parts and supply chain and economies of scale across the whole product family. And so I think that's, as we look out over the longer term, I think that's going to make it a little bit easier than would be typical in the automotive world, where you've got, in a traditional automaker, a shared platform might be 30% the same parts. Tesla's taken that to a much higher degree. They're like 80%, 70 to 80% of the Model 3, Model Y. But we're looking at really what is effectively one product that gets some differentiation at the very end of the production process.
So you're still working on really that process of, so to speak, building the machine that builds the machine. And then once you've got that system set, then copy and paste. But that's still about a couple years away, right?
Yeah, and over the next 2 years, we will see, we believe, meaningful increases in scale output of what we're building today. But at the same time, we're taking all of those learnings and figuring out how to ramp it up by a significant factor for over the next couple of years.
I want to ask you about this company. Maybe you've heard about them. This is Canoe. This is another.
Very familiar.
Yeah, and they have this same. I don't want to call it the same because it's very obviously you're the different market here, or maybe a similar market. I'll have you comment on that. But they've got the same idea of basically using the same sort of skateboard design, which you're talking about, the same sort of fundamental design, except yours has 3, theirs has 4. And then here's your car, here's your pickup, here's your box car, here's your Uber or whatever. How do you compete with these, for example?
Well, I would say it's a similar approach. Probably the only difference being that with the FUV platform, you're not just sharing that underlying skateboard. You're sharing the same frame. You're sharing the same windshield, the same windshield wiper, the same fluid reservoir, the same lights, the same tail lights, a lot of the same body panel plastics. And so again, that's where it's sort of like that next level of sharing between members of the product family. That's and I guess the Canoe example would be one where that would be like, I think, what Tesla is doing, where they're probably aiming for that 70% something shared parts within the product family. I'm not sure what their internal targets are, but you're still going to end up having a lot of variation between those various different models. where we're shooting really for what is effectively one product that then goes after, gets specialized at the very end of the process for particular markets.
Yeah, I mean, 95% as a target, 90 to 95%, all the same. I mean, that's really incredible. I mean, that's really almost just one line, and at the end, you're putting on the ads that people want, door or whatever.
Yeah, and the one cool thing about Canoo that they've been very clear that they want to have sort of vehicles as a service where you don't actually own it. You use it when you need it. I'm not sure exactly what the details of that model are going to work out to be, but I could see, if you've got a 7-passenger Canoo van, that's a great tool to take up to go, skiing in the mountains for a weekend. And then you come back and you're using your Arcimoto type vehicle for your daily trip. So I think that they're articulating a piece of that, that idea that the vehicle is really it's a shared utility tool that should be used for its purpose at particular times.
How does your vehicle compare to, let's say, the smart car? The smart car was, I at least from what I can recall from research back in the day, just pretty dang safe. I mean, they have this thing crashing into walls at 70 miles an hour in tests, and the thing goes flying, but the test dummies are safe inside. Can we compare to the smart? Or I know it's a fourth wheel, but
again, I mean, even compared to the smart, I think the electric smart was a couple thousand pounds. We're shooting for something that's basically half the weight of the smart car.
Wow.
Something that is easy, yet still easier to park. I think it has, I would say, arguably a more compelling drive experience. And then ultimately, I think as a four-wheeled car, their whole sort of safety ethos was based around the idea of the automobile. And I think that's going to be something that over time we are, and particularly as Arcimoto scales into a mass market solution, that's going to be a bigger piece of our story as well.
Sandy Munro, you brought him up. He's a big fan of three-wheeled vehicles, but there are a lot of people who don't think three-wheeled vehicles are the future. Why? What complaints do they have, and what are your thoughts on those complaints?
Well, I think if you think back to the electric vehicle, and this was something that Tesla did a fantastic job of dispelling. The notion of an electric vehicle before Tesla was a pokey golf cart. Right, that was the consensus idea behind of what an electric vehicle was. And so you look back at the early interviews with Eberhard and Tarpenning, and they would say, one of the big things we wanted to do was just dispel that notion entirely. And so that was one of the reasons why they came out with the Roadster first. Was here you have this thing that just has smashing performance characteristics in an electric vehicle. And I think in much the same way, a lot of people, the idea of a three-wheeled vehicle is the Reliant Robin and the episode that Top Gear did, where they just rolled it over and over and over again. They had people tip them back up and so on. And so I think that idea still persists out in the marketplace. And I think Arcimoto is going to do a really good job of dispelling that notion. That is, you got to drive it. You got to experience it. And what you find is something that's, it just has a truly compelling ride experience. And that's what we have heard over and over and over from our customer base. And I think that as that notion seeps out into the market, that it will be, it will be shown as a more and more viable large scale vehicle platform opportunity. And I should say, we're not the only ones doing this, right? So back when I started in 2007, there were like no products on the road in the North American market in this space. And since then, Can-Am, Bombardier came out with the Can-Am Spyder. The Polaris has come out with the Slingshot. You had guys like Paul Elio out there articulating this kind of reverse trike format. And so I think we're entering into the market at a time when it's not so much of a novelty, and sort of working together to dispel some of the early notions, because there are a lot of, what we found is there are a lot of wrong ways to design a three-wheel vehicle, and there are a few right ones. And so we believe that we have landed on one of those one of those very right platform architectures.
How do you compare yourself to the Polaris? You brought them up. So
Yep.
obviously, it's something that people compare y'all to. How do you compare? What's different here? I mean, they got two seats next to each other. You got two seats, in a row. Tell me about this.
Well, I think of it as the Polaris Slingshot it's a fun machine. I mean, it's just a super fun ride experience. It's like a sports car, basically. I don't think it has the same utility thesis that the FUV has. It's not the Slingshot is not your grocery getter. It's your weekend tour machine. And so I would say that what we have been after from the very beginning. It's also it's a gas powered vehicle, and so it doesn't have certainly doesn't have the clean cachet of an electric vehicle. What we have been going after, though, from day one is an everyday electric vehicle that is super efficient and suitable for the wide range of everyday trips. I do think that there are people out there who are looking for a fun vehicle experience, and they might say, well, I'd actually rather get the electric fun utility vehicle than the gas powered Slingshot. So I think we will compete, and particularly with the Roadster that we are building. I think that the Roadster is really aimed at that fun vehicle segment. That would be vehicles like the Spider, like the Slingshot, like a sports car, like a motorcycle. So we do compete in that kind of head-to-head motorcycle / sports car type range. But I think that the Arcimoto platform has a lot more breadth probably in the market than being just honed in on that one factor.
And now, so I mean, the Roadster here, I get that. So you're saying the Roadster here is really like a Slingshot competitor, where you've got these vehicles here. These could be your daily purpose vehicles. Now, I mean, here's somebody putting some groceries into the back here. I mean, how much storage do we really have? I mean, is somebody going to be able to feed their family with a trip to the grocery store, or can you add on more storage? Can you speak to storage a little bit?
Yeah, so it's the back storage bin is designed to carry a carry-on luggage or a few bags of groceries. We have accessories that are about to come online. Like one of them is a back seat storage bag that lets you really significantly upsize the amount of storage the amount of stuff you can carry when you are driving alone. We have what we're presently calling the Arcimoto sidecar, which is a place where it's sort of a sidecar for your dog, but that you can. I mean, I've used it to carry a ton of firewood around. We're going to have a golf club rack, surfboard rack, bike rack. And the idea there really is that the fun utility vehicle as a platform is something that you can tune to your particular daily needs. So if you are golfing every day, as a number of people are, you get the golf club attachment. If you're going mountain biking, you get the attachment for that. If you're doing lots of grocery runs in it, you want to use that back, have an easy storage edition for the back seat. And so there it is a very flexible platform that you can tune to your particular needs.
Got it. Yeah. So I can't find a quick example of one of your sidecars, and that's probably because you're still developing and testing that. But I'll just use this as an example here. So what you're saying is, you could have your three-wheeled, vehicle here, the fun utility vehicle, and then maybe you could just hook on a sidecar, and that could be something that has, I don't know, 4 or 5x the storage capability if you wanted that.
Yeah. And I'll get you a screenshot of it.
Sure.
Email it to you. But it's the sidecar was about a year of development of trying to figure out how to get my dog to not bark directly in my ear while going to the dog park. And so our first concept was really all about having a back seat. A backseat option. Here we go. Wait, no, that's that would carry the dogs, and then ultimately, it just I took her on a camping trip, and she sat shotgun and was just completely chill. And I was like, okay, I've been barking up the wrong tree. We need a sidecar. So that was how it all came about.
So yeah, I know you're working on that photo there, and I don't want to go in a different direction. We'll come right back to that. I want to ask you, when you've probably heard of Lucid Motors. They plan to get to 30,000 vehicles per year with their factory that they've built in Arizona. How realistic is that to actually ramp from essentially zero? I mean, just alphas, right? Or beta test cars even, to 30,000 vehicles a year. Are they going to be on that same 2-year ramp as well, just to get to 30K before they start building onto their factory to try to get to larger targets?
Well, I don't think that I'm in a having not. I mean, I am familiar with Lucid, but I have not done the deep dive on their manufacturing plans. I think I would be talking out of school if I commented on the reality or lack thereof. I would only say that getting a vehicle to scale production it's a difficult undertaking, and that industry wide. The sort of the projections of companies versus what.
Oh, let's see here. Oh, I think I lost Mark here. We'll have to bring Mark back. Okay, we'll come right back to Mark. So I will ask Mark to rejoin. Yeah, there we go. We'll wait for Mark to come back. So, I mean, very interesting. I mean, that's a regular issue. Oh, there we go. I think, Mark, I think you're back.
Yeah. I'm back.
Oh, perfect. Okay, welcome
back.
Yeah, sorry. On scale.
Yeah. All right. I found it. I found this photo for you. I'm going to.
Oh, perfect.
I'm going to send it your way in the email chain. But it's I
think it's very fascinating what you're talking about with this massive push for scale and how difficult it really is. I think as a consumer, it's so hard for a consumer or even an investor who's not in manufacturing to really understand how difficult it really is to get to scale. And folks regularly complain that, and maybe you can comment on this, oh, Tesla so overvalued, selling for, so many times earnings, 5 years out to get to a reasonable valuation. Is it potentially, or is there potential that Tesla's selling for these higher multiples in terms of their share price because they've achieved that scale, at least to some level? They're leading on that scale push?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a massive de-risk when you're already at scale. Right. If production scaling is a monster risk, then that getting through that hurdle and having a track record of being through that hurdle is a big deal. And I think that's going to be, as you look at the number of different companies now that have gone public using the special purpose acquisition corps, the SPACs, that have, and you brought up Nikola, but they, where you've got a really nice looking prototype or some really great looking renders. There's a long road between having a nice looking prototype and even getting production vehicle number 1 off of the line, right? You think about the hurdles that Tesla had in the early days, just getting the Roadster into the market, getting their first customer vehicles out the door. I saw a video recently. I think it was Stephen Mark Ryan did a piece on that included a lot of the early footage from Tesla. That was like from Who Killed the Electric Car, where they had 50 of their vehicles in that were essentially in quality control that had yet to be delivered to customers because of a paint scratch here or the wipers not working here. That's that monster hurdle just to get into production. And we felt that pain from like the middle of 2018 through the end of the summer of 2019. And then you're in the market and there is that giant early market hurdle of, now we've delivered vehicles to customers and they're complaining about the fit and finish issues, or this component stopped working, or I'm hearing a funny noise from over here. And so getting all of those ironed out is a fairly Herculean challenge. And then you've got the whole issue of just bringing the whole supply chain up essentially simultaneously to get to real volume. So all of those are distinct hurdles in the process. And I think that it's particularly when you aspire to get to those real volume production goals, there can be a tendency to gloss over some of those really challenging bumps in the road, or in a lot of cases, you just don't know what you don't know. And I think Elon has said before, and I certainly empathize with this, is that if he'd understood the difficulty that was going to happen, he probably wouldn't have done it. Right. So there's a certain, and I definitely, I was, when I started in 2007, I was not prepared for dedicating 12 years of my life just to get production vehicle number 1 on the road. I thought it was going to take 6 months. I was way off, but so ignorance, at least in the early days, was in some ways an enabler.
Yeah, it almost otherwise it would have discouraged you, is what you're saying. Wow, that's incredible. So I mean, really, when you hear these new SPACs coming up, or really these SPACs taking these idea companies public, I mean, they a lot of these vehicles, they could be just maybe even 10 years away from development. I mean, you hear about the Apple car and how they've got engineers working on the sound system. They've got one engineer working on LED lights for the dash and things like that. I mean, it sounds like Apple's 8 years away. I mean, what's your take? Do you have any thoughts on Apple?
Well, they've been working on this now for a number of years, and they are still a ways away by all accounts. I do think that again, Apple I would put into the same category as Tesla, which is that they are building a much more complex machine, in terms of LED light, the LED lighting engineer for the dash, right? But where I would probably the massive difference between Tesla and an idea SPAC company going public is that Apple has many decades of experience manufacturing products, particularly electronics. Which is a big component of the electric vehicle puzzle. So I think they are positioned probably better than almost anybody to really deliver a truly compelling product into this space. I think the other challenge that the SPAC approach has is that if you're not really, and I think Lucid is probably a real differentiator in this case, in that they are really pushing to get into production, get production vehicles out there. They've been building towards that factory point for a long time, and heavily capitalized on this mission before going public. But there are only so many quarters you can deliver zero revenue to the public market before you start to get investors very antsy, and that's different than in the startup world, where if you have a really long-term venture capital funded play, a new drug that's going to take 12 years to get to market, that's a known factor when those investors go in at the beginning. But any delay into the public market can be a substantial hit. And so we saw some of the aspects of this happen with Nikola, where what were essentially aspirational statements about where the company wanted to be were looked more like they were made as statements of fact, and that is you can get the pass on that when you're a private company to some degree, but in the public markets not so much.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Here's a truck that's it's going down. It's driving. It's rolling. Oh my gosh. Well, we won't comment too much on Nikola. I want to know to autonomy, because you think these could be a potential future in robotaxis. In fact, it almost sounds like that might be one of your bigger targets, is having this be a robotaxi network-enabled vehicle, especially with what you mentioned, that 80% of Uber rides are just one person. And here you've got 2 seats in this, so maybe you're hitting 90% of the market, especially if it could drive itself. What's your take on LiDAR?
Well, I think there's a lot of cool stuff. So in that sensors and software world, there are a lot of different approaches that people are taking to solve the problem. And I would probably highlight the work that Luminar is doing on LiDAR. They've got and I think they've got the right idea, which is they need to have a very robust, very low cost solution for the problem, in order for it to work as a mass market, mass production vehicle type of a solution. Because a lot of the kind of early LiDAR approaches are these, very complex, mechanical constructs that are not going to solve, last the test of time, and just in terms of mechanical reliability, let alone cost reduction. And so,
like big spinning things.
I know that Elon he's already staked out his position, which is, basically humans drive with cameras. And so we don't need LiDAR to figure out how to drive a car down the road. So why should a car? But then there's also a big difference between, best in class sensors today and what the human perception can do. So will you be able to make that all up with good software and the right neural net processing, or does having real spatial data coming in make the safer full robotaxi come faster? I don't think that I am in a position to have a meaningful addition to that discussion, other than to say we're willing to work with anybody on making, their particular vision of how autonomous vehicles come into play. And this is not just on road. I mean, we're looking at using our own platform as a material mover within our factory. So, you think about that Arcimoto backbone, that actually makes a very good workhorse for a production scenario, potentially for moving materials around a production site. So it could be anything from a much more constrained problem, like a factory footprint, all the way up to what is really probably the biggest challenge, which is generalized autonomous driving in any weather condition on any road, whether you've got lane markings or not.
That makes sense. Do you think you would end up then partnering with, some autonomous manufacturer, so maybe like a Mobileye or whatever, so it doesn't matter what company, but you're in the future, it sounds like you would expect to partner with somebody to sort of integrate this autonomous solution into this vehicle, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and we are very focused on the platform side of this equation. We want to build the most robust 3-wheeled vehicle platform that suits the wide range of daily driving needs. And I think that opens us up to a lot of opportunities with folks who've been working on other pieces of the ecosystem puzzle.
Got it. Okay, what about, so we've touched on LiDAR, which is very interesting. And the whole robotaxi idea, I think, is fascinating about the potential future here of having these as robotaxis. I have that picture here. I want to pull that up. Thank you for emailing that over. So this is what you're thinking in terms of like a sidecar here. It doesn't look like it really has another wheel. There's no fourth wheel that's hanging out.
No, it just hangs off of the side of the vehicle behind that front wheel. So it is you can see that's Kira modeling it, but the dogs definitely love it, and it also just adds a lot of storage capacity. And again, that's another nice thing about just having the mass of the Arcimoto really on the center line of the vehicle, inside that triangle of the wheels.
Huh. Yeah, no, and that it doesn't look like it would be something that would be terribly expensive if somebody wanted to add one of those. Looks like you would just add it to one side so that you could still get out the other side.
Correct.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So then, if somebody said, hey, I want to buy a fun utility vehicle, how long are they waiting these days to get one?
It depends on where you are. So because we're only presently delivering in the West Coast states as well as Florida, if you're in those areas, it's probably 90 days out, something like that. And then we're working very diligently to open up new market areas over the course of this year. We would like to at least be able to hit something on the order of 70 or 80% of our pre-order list within the span of 2021 into 2022. And then, we ultimately want to be delivering nationwide and then all over the world. But for our customers who have put in, aspirational pre-orders from the UK, we still have to go through European homologation. And so that's, some of those are going to be a couple of years out, few years out, versus if you're in one of the next states that we're going to open, it'd be more like summertime.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. So can you speak to how many people are pre-ordering?
We had an inadvertent tweet go out the other day. So we actually ended up 8K'ing that we now have more than 4,800 pre-orders for the Arcimoto. And that's actually been a spike up from, we've seen quarter over quarter a net increase in pre-orders for the last 5 or 6 years. But we've started to see a spike up now that we are in production and sort of getting more awareness out there about the product.
And what's the usual, I hear pre-orders a lot, even with other manufacturers. Is there like a rule of thumb that's used maybe even at your company or that you're aware of where people say, how many pre-orders do we actually think will end up going to sale?
I think it's we have a hard time predicting that right at the moment. Like, what's our real conversion on pre-orders? And to be clear, we have always articulated pre-orders as strong sales leads. We do not consider these to be sort of firm vehicle orders until the point at which somebody puts down a non-refundable sort of larger scale deposit. But some folks have pre-ordered looking at that $11,900 target price. Others have said, I'm pre-ordering for the $17,900 vehicle. And so I think, as we have gone through our list, there's been a big chunk of people who said, no, I'm going to, keep me on the list. I'm waiting. And others who are saying, I got to have that thing right now. Here's my $2,500 reservation. But as we actually get further down the road and much closer to mass production, I think that we'll have a clear picture of what those, what's our real conversion on pre-orders. But the fact that we have had a net increase of pre-orders, including cancellations, for the last, sort of, 24 quarters or something like that, I see that as a positive sign. I think that we're getting the sort of word of mouth effect. We're starting to see that in the order process. And I see that as a positive sign. So all of this leads me to believe that demand generation is not our problem, that our real hurdle is getting to scale of production to meet the market need. And again, this is the vehicle market's a multi-trillion-dollar market with 70 to 100 million cars sold every year worldwide, not to mention 100 million plus two-wheeled vehicles. And we think many of those use cases, that 80% niche that Arcimoto aims to fill, will provide us with production demand for years to come. But we'll see.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about, you had mentioned the rent this vehicle for tourism purposes. Why not create an app and maybe do that canoe subscription model where you just rent these out? Hey, let's set up shop in LA, and maybe it's more than just a vacation destination thing. Maybe it's just hey, do you want to rent this instead of on a daily basis on a month-to-month contract
or hourly? or by the minute or by the mile. I think I would say stay tuned. We are the vacation destination rental is one rental model that we are planning to explore. But I think that the rental model that fits each market can vary. What is the right rental model for New York City? What's the right rental model for Santa Monica? What's the right rental model for Miami? What's the right rental model for Kauai? I think there are going to be differences between each. Where do you pick up the vehicle? Is this, do we put them at hotels so that the 40% of hotel guests that are getting there via an Uber or a Lyft have something that they can take to tool around the island? I think that model will work very well in certain locales. And then more of the kind of, zip car type model would work in other cities. And then even where I've got a vehicle in my driveway, is there a way that I can let my neighbors use it via the same app? So that if they, a neighbor wants to take it to go do a grocery run, they can check my vehicle out and I can generate rental revenue from that. Those are all options that are on the table.
Oh, wow. I mean, those are a lot of different incredible ideas there. I mean, even just the idea of, hey, it's parked in my driveway. Who wants to walk over and drive it around? I mean, that's awesome via an app. That's almost something you could do before robo-taxis, where maybe we're not at robo-taxis until, and I'll ask you on this, but who knows, maybe until 2025. Who knows? We'll see. But in the meantime, hey, I want to take it for a spin. Cool. I'll check it out. And there's one located right there. I'll take that out. Almost like a zip car model for residences, but then also this destination model, kind of like that Wheel Fun idea where, they're parked at the hotel. And in New York, maybe you have your enclosed model in the future, whereas in Florida, you've got the open model. Am I on the right track with that? I
think you're on a number of right tracks. And one other thing to consider is that with the robo-taxi, the pitch is, it makes the road a lot safer for everybody else when you have an autonomous driving system that is paying attention to, what's going on in the world on a millisecond basis, right? It doesn't get distracted. It doesn't fall asleep. It doesn't get drunk. So having robotaxi makes the world safe, not just for the occupant, but for literally everybody else out on the road. As does, we would argue, making the vehicle platforms much smaller. So we normally think of safety in this, what's in it for me, right? But the reality is that if everybody is driving much smaller, much lighter machines, then you're making the world a lot safer for everybody else out there. The other pitch for the robotaxi is that you don't have to drive anymore, right? You can go do other things like watch Meet Kevin on YouTube or tweet angrily at your favorite politician. Instead of paying attention to the road. But what we found is that with the Arcimoto, it's a really fun experience to drive it. So taking away the driving experience isn't actually our first goal of autonomy. I think what we're looking at for the first goal of autonomy is how can we make it more convenient for you to get the vehicle in the first place? And that's actually a much more constrained, simpler problem than how do you do full level 5 autonomy at high speed on any freeway in any condition.
Interesting. That is almost like a little bit of a balancing factor you've got there. Is the more we go to autonomous, sure, having a very low cost a vehicle that transports people efficiently and the small form factor is great, but you then potentially take away the fun aspect because you are doing other things. You're not driving yourself anymore. You take away that enjoyment, huh?
And arguably any 4,000, 5,000 pound machine that is manufactured, once full autonomy exists and is provably better from a safety perspective, manufacturers ought to be mandated to include that as a standard feature, right? Because a distracted, and hate to beat up on teenagers, but it could be a distracted anybody driving or a drowsy driver inside of a 4,000 pound machine is a real liability to themselves and anybody else on the road. And so that, that makes the world a much safer place for bicycles, for scooters, for Arcimotos, for the small human scale transportation solutions. And I think that's going to be a real key driver towards sustainable mobility, is just you make the cars safe for everybody else, and suddenly people feel a lot more comfortable riding a bike.
Yeah, that's a good point. And now charging, is this something where you'll partner with sort of the mass charging networks and you kind of plug this thing in, or is this mostly just you charge it when it's at home?
Well, we use the standard J plug, J1772 level 2 charging input for the vehicle. And then, but the reality is what you really need for a daily driving vehicle for the Arcimoto is just a 110 outlet. I mean, you can get a full overnight charge from a 110, and that's partly because it is a very efficient vehicle. So our whole mantra really is use less. Use less power, use less material, use less from the world in order to solve this kind of basic daily driving problem. There will be applications, and whether it's going on a long distance tour, or if you've got a delivery vehicle and you want to get 200 or 300 miles out of it during a day, then we're going to need to have a higher capacity charging option. But for that kind of baseline case of everyday utility, it's a level 1, if potentially a level 2, if you get a little impatient in between outings, is absolutely sufficient.
What kind of on efficiency, what kind of miles per kilowatt hour are you running?
So the MPGE is 173.7 for city driving, which I think is right around 180 watt hours per mile. We see a pathway for kind of next iterations of the product family to get to that sub 150 watt hours per mile, or on the order of 230 miles per gallon equivalent. That's our target for the FUV platform, and that's going to involve a little bit of weight reduction, aerodynamic improvements, drivetrain efficiency improvements. But right out the gates, to have a vehicle that is 20% more efficient for city driving than the most efficient full-size car for electric cars that has had gazillions of dollars of R&D into squeezing every last electron through the process. We think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and just to convert that, so I was just playing with this a little bit. We've got Tesla running somewhere around 4 miles per kilowatt hour. Lucid is trying to hit the same target. They say we want to get above 4. That's like the standard. Dividing yours out, it seems like because you're such a smaller vehicle, I'm guessing much less weight, you're actually getting somewhere around 5.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And you're
we
trying
get
to get
that up around
7.
6 to 7.
6, 7.
Like
Wow. Okay.
And again, that's over kind of next iterations of the product family.
Wow. Who's doing your batteries?
So we actually build our own battery modules and battery packs. And then we buy cells from a company called Ferrosis. They make a really nice pouch cell that has great so good power and good energy within the same cell. This is the same cell that's in the Zero motorcycle. I would say over the ultimately we are we're not, because we are not a cell manufacturer. We are ultimately sort of agnostic on chemistry, on cell form factor, on is it long term going to be some kind of a super ultra capacitor or solid state or whatever. The idea with the Arcimoto is to use the best in class battery and then just use a lot less of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you say the modules and packs, that's just really the fans, the cooling, how it sits in the vehicle, but you get the actual cells from whoever's got the battery tech, you plop it in, it fits, it works great, but your goal is really, we just want to use as few batteries as possible anyway. I mean, how big are your battery packs? I think I read somewhere like under 20 kilowatt hours or something like that.
19.2 kilowatt hours. So it's about a quarter of the battery of a full-size car. And if you think about the constraint on batteries, and this is something that Tesla's been very public about, is just that's sort of the limiting factor is battery production. Well, if you can get 4 times as many vehicles out on the road, then you end up that's a major accelerant. So And again, this is just for those that 80% niche of trips that comprises the vast majority of our daily vehicle use. We just think, rather than replicating the car pattern, we just want to build the right tool for each job. And there's definitely a place for the full-size vehicle that's designed to travel intercity hundreds of miles on a charge with lots of people. There is for sure that use case, but it's not the ideal grocery getter.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, looking at like one of the complaints Elon has about the semi is that the semi truck will use 5 times as many batteries packs or batteries cells, whatever, as a car. And you're saying your fun utility vehicle uses 4 times less than the average car, so really 20 times less than the semi, and so you could get so many more vehicles out there. And I mean, I think your range is a little over 100 miles. I mean, how many people are driving more than 100 miles a day anyway?
Well, the average across the U.S. is about 30 miles a day for driving. So it's 3 days of driving for 50% of the population.
Wow. Can you talk about Bitcoin? Tesla, Elon Musk has obviously dumped $1.5 billion into Bitcoin. They have spent more money on Bitcoin than your entire market cap. What do you think about Bitcoin?
Oh man, should have made Ridecoin. Anyway, so my challenge with Bitcoin really comes from being a programmer, and the algorithmic incentive for Bitcoin is to produce more and more mining machines, drawing more and more power to drive the system and to keep the transaction log accurate. And that incentive just ends up burning a ton of energy. And I realize there are folks out there who argue, well, look at the energy consumed by traditional banking world and all of the branches and all that. It's like, it's a total whatabout in the sense that going to Bitcoin or having Bitcoin as an alternative is not presently getting rid of all of those banking outlets. But ultimately, and then the other arguments are, well, most of Bitcoin is being mined at sustainable, as close as possible to hydroelectric power, which is clean. It's like, but it's still using power, right? It's still using that power that would otherwise be powering something else. I think my question is just, is there a way that we can do digital financing and transactions that is not reliant on this arms race of power consumption? And I think my bet is that there absolutely is, and that at the point that becomes prevalent and widely used, that people will question the value of anything that's stored in the Bitcoin form. That being said, I think if we have a demand from our customers to purchase vehicles or purchase rides in Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency generally, that's something that we'll look very closely at. But it's to me, we've just got, our priority and focus today is getting the platform to scale and delivering a truly compelling ride. And we're not presently capitalized to stick a ton of our cash into any crypto. We're really focused on getting today's job done.
Oh, that's interesting. You started this conversation out with the even before we began the live stream, discussing how one of your visions is really a more sustainable future, a less energy dependent future, and reducing those costs and needs. Does that mean Bitcoin is just really counter to you and what you believe?
That has been my objection to it, is that it's the algorithm that preserves the transaction log relies on it is an arms race, because it is the continuance of the blockchain that is the mining process that generates new Bitcoins. And as the value of Bitcoins goes up, then it becomes more economically viable to add more machines to mine more Bitcoin. And so the higher that Bitcoin's price goes, the more demand that there is for Bitcoin, the more incentive there will be to buy more computers to mine more Bitcoin that's just sitting there doing nothing but running cryptographic puzzle problems to find these digital needles in the haystack. And so that to me is just, I just look at it as there is got to be a better way of maintaining a transaction log across a digital currency. And that, the advantages of Bitcoin, that it has, ultimately a finite number of currency units. 21 million Bitcoins will ever be mined according to the algorithm. And that you can, ship currency across borders worldwide with no fees, and it's anonymized. Those may or may not be potentially desirable things for a currency to have, but it carries with it this ever escalating just waste. I mean, that ultimately finding those digital needles in the haystack is you're just running crypto puzzles ad nauseum. That's not generating any real other value than maintaining a transaction log in a distributed fashion.
And that, I guess, is the downside of almost this whole decentralized process, that you almost have to have this continuous multitude of other people verifying so that it all links up. Does that mean that all blockchain suffers from the same problem, or are there other blockchains that have figured a solution out?
My understanding is that there are others that have figured out various solutions. One is, if you think about Ethereum and their whole push to include sort of more useful information beyond just a currency within the blockchain. And then some folks have been hitting me up on Twitter. There's another coin that apparently doesn't have that particular computational overhead of Bitcoin. I think there are going to be, and again, that's why it's sort of like, the idea of distributed digital currency and what the value that brings. I think that's hard to argue with. My question is just, is Bitcoin the one true future coin? And I see it has a giant efficiency problem. So,
that makes sense.
But it certainly's got it's got the hype today. As soon as people change their Twitter descriptions to Bitcoin, hey, value goes up, and apparently institutional investors are getting on board. So, gosh, we better follow suit, right?
Hey, and then next is Dogecoin.
Well, I actually named the dog after Dogecoin, so her last name's Doge because she's money.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah. Again,
so
it's
a big future then. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I think I see a lot of hype out there around crypto generally and Bitcoin in specific. Although the Doge memes are certainly hilarious at times. But I think that it's got to be addressed with a real look at the long-term consumption picture without doing the what about the current financial system. Because I think that if you say our argument is we want to replace the current financial system with something that's much better, you got to look at what's going to really check all the boxes. And once we've got that, then let's switch to that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And that could end up, in theory, being like a Federal Reserve stablecoin, which somehow figures out how to efficiently use the blockchain, so you get the benefits of the blockchain. But it's just, hey, $1, one coin. It's not really an investment. It's more of just the tool. And we use something like that, I suppose. Any thoughts on that? Central banks having these coins, or even like JP Morgan coin?
That's the question too around any sort of fiat currency is who controls it and who gets to print more of it. And I think that's one of the real arguments for Bitcoin in the first place, is that nobody gets to print more unless you're part of the mining puzzle.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what's the near term here for the fun utility vehicles? What does 2021 look like for you? You mentioned you've got these 5,000 pre-orders. You want to try to get 70%ish of these fulfilled here in 2021. So getting somewhere maybe around
Well, no, I should be sure. I should be clear. We want to make sure that we can sell to the geographic locations that comprise 70% of our pre-order list. So we're not shooting to get 3,000 vehicles out on the road this year. We're
Great
shooting to have,
clarification. Thank you for that.
our goal number one from the production side is to create a smooth river, smoothly flowing river from order to material flow to production to sales to delivery, and ultimately making sure that we've got the teams in place in market to care for vehicles. So getting rid of all the kinks in the process, making it a very seamless process for our customers. Really make the app get the app out there and have that be a part of it, to be able to rent vehicles through an app, to be able to just have so that we can very in a very measured way increase the flow of that production river. So that's getting the all of our supply chain kinks alleviated is front and center. And then the other big piece, which is the big piece really for Arcimoto, is getting the pieces in place to get to scale production. And so that's going to mean we have entered into an agreement to purchase a new factory space. The present owner of that facility needs to move out. There's going to be a lot of upgrades that we're going to do to the building. And then I want to have some meaningful production work. Sort of the big picture goal there is to get some meaningful production work done out of there by the end of this year, and then be really cranking vehicles out the door by the end of next year. And that's, that is, so there's a lot of production planning work that needs to be done. There's a lot of production, vehicle product refinement that is really mostly about what techniques are we using and what materials and methods are we using to produce each part when we're producing at much higher volume. So right now, the chassis, the cage, are all made of sort of like sheet metal and tube origami that's all welded together with robotic welders. But at some point, at certain volume thresholds, it makes more sense to do stampings for certain parts of the vehicle, or injection casting, or injection molded plastics. And those are the things that we're evaluating right now.
Okay. So because that's something where Elon was actually talking to Sandy Munro about how maybe the future standard is you stamp the back, you stamp the bottom or the middle section, you stamp the front, and who knows, maybe at some point in the future you can even get to a 2-stamp process where you have just a front and back essentially.
Yeah, they've got their
your vehicle's a little different.
Well, yeah, and Tesla's done. I mean, they've just done some. Those are actually castings. The front and the back are castings. They've got these mega castings where they're basically pouring molten metal into a mold and then pulling out a finished part. And what they have arguably some of the best materials scientists in the world. They've come up with their own alloys. They're making working together to make spaceships and next generation vehicles, and they've had to invent their own alloys to do castings that big. One of the advantages of the Arcimoto is that it's small enough that you could take a similar approach using traditional casting methods and materials.
So where it doesn't crumple up when you heat it to I think Elon Musk calls it potato chips if it's too large, huh? You don't have that issue because it's not that large, huh?
Yeah, we're building something that if you cast the whole front section of the Arcimoto, it is still a large casting, but it is not the size of a car. And I think no potato chip you choose. No, much smaller potato chips.
Yeah,
at the very
I got it. Love it.
And that does go back to in terms of the difficulty of getting to scale. I was talking to somebody who was just saying, Elon likes to pick really hard problems and then goes out there and gets them done. And I think what we have aimed to do is solve a much simpler problem in order to make the ultimate grocery getter. So it's just a different type, but a lot of those benefits that come from really the awesome work that Tesla has done. We expect that those will filter into the rest of the industry. The push that they're doing on batteries is going to have it's going to be a forcing function on the rest of the battery industry to catch up. And that's going to benefit all electric vehicles.
Yeah, that's almost, I think, what China is really, or one of the reasons China is being so accommodating to Tesla is when you have this front runner, it leads to more production at the graphite miners, more production at the battery facilities, more production at the metal facilities, the steel factories, whatever. And they're almost using Tesla as a tool to pull the entire industry forward. Uh, I suppose the same benefit is going to be true out here. You get better battery technology because there's a bigger battery market. You get to take a small slice of that as a customer for those batteries and solve that grocery getter problem, that smaller 80% of your daily driving needs issue locally in a fun way.
That is the hope.
Now, if somebody wants to, put like 10 grocery bags or something for a larger, like let's say they're doing a Costco run, is there maybe a future option where you have like a little trailer that it pulls? I mean, there's a limit to how much you can store. I know you're working on that back seat storage.
Yeah.
We've got the little back hatch, maybe the sidecar.
We have prototyped what we call the Arcimoto, which is a tow hitch for the Arcimoto. But I would say you'd be amazed at what level of a full Costco run you can do when you use that whole back seat for storage as well. I think we're gonna really focus probably more initially on increasing the storage options that would just sort of hook onto the vehicle, whether it's saddlebags for the Roadster or the backseat big storage bag or the sidecar. But ultimately, again, and this is just, we want to make sure that vehicle platform is as configurable as possible for what you need it for every day. So if you're doing construction work and you want to get a deliverator to carry your tools and have a lumber rack that runs down the side of the vehicle to carry 2x4s, that's something that we want to enable. Wow. So that we can start to kind of expand that 80% need into 83 or 85 or 87% of those daily utility trips.
A lumber rack on the side. I mean, it's almost like you're trying to create the Sprinter van of everyday life, where what do you want to put in? We got a solution.
Much smaller Sprinter van. Yes.
Right. I guess more that upfitting point of view, because I know when you go get a Sprinter, it's like you want the racks, you want this on the roof and the ladder rack that comes pulling down and all that. Almost whatever you could do for those purposes here on a very small scale.
Yeah, lots of configurability, lots of optionality, and ultimately it's the idea that from a venture point of view, you're coming in with a very low base model price, and then lots of higher margin ways for customers to really make it their own.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that ran through my head was, if you have all of this optionality, doesn't that complicate the manufacturing process? I mean, you've got so many different pieces. It kind of, you start separating from, it's all 95% the same, because sure, the initial base might be 95%, but then you've got 30 different directions you're going into. Okay, they want the AC, they want the full doors, they want the I don't know, the lumber rack or the sidecar. Does that create more complexity that could hurt profitability in the long run?
It does create a bit more complexity. I think there are going to be two ways that we solve this. One is identifying early on what are the options that are chosen by a large segment of the customer base. So the things that would get optioned onto the vehicle in the actual production process would be things that are typical of lots and lots and lots of our customers. And then it's very likely that we will have what's essentially a custom shop. So if you want a custom paint job, or you want, a lesser known or lesser used option, then at the end of the production process, vehicle goes off into a separate facility to have that done on a vehicle by vehicle basis. And we charge appropriately, right? So those options would carry a higher price and actually a higher margin than the ones that are being produced on the line proper.
Gotcha. So it really becomes the here's the Apple iPhone, but we're gonna sell you this extremely, which the phone itself is high margin. Apple has mastered margins, but then we're gonna sell you a case, but then we're also going to sell you a wallet that magnets onto the back, and all these things are really where this extra additional revenue is coming in pretty fast, huh?
Exactly.
Gotcha. So I'm just looking here. It looks like this is, I don't know how much you can comment on this, but I'm going to ask the question here. Wall Street believes that you're going to go from $3 million in revenue here in 2020 to 20 in 2021 to 65, so 3x in 2022, and then 3x again in 23, and then double in 2024. Broadly speaking, to what you can, where's Wall Street getting these ideas from, and are they on the right track?
Well, we have not released any revenue guidance for other than just very broad aspirational, unit production potentials for those out years, and that just is because we're still early days in the production process, and there are so many unknowns. So I would caution anybody to look at sort of near term. We in Q4 we guided that there was a lot of revenue, near term revenue uncertainty as a result of the pandemic. We have had a couple of shutdowns, one very long in 2020, and then the other that was about a week towards the end of the year. So we shipped in total 97 vehicles to customers in 2020. So it's pretty easy to do some rough math on what that revenue looks like for that year. Yep. In terms of 2021, we have internal targets, but again, we think that there's going to be a lot of near-term uncertainty, particularly Q1, but even into Q2 as we begin to really finalize the alleviation of our supply chain kinks. As we get towards the end of this year, I think we're going to be able to give much better guidance as far as 2022 and beyond. But I would say take those Wall Street projections, realize that given where we are in the production process, that those have some pretty big error bars attached to them. That as we get, and this is just, it's again, the reality of being an early vehicle production enterprise. And I would say you should expect those same error bars on every single other new EV production company. But that I think that we're going to get to the point here relatively soon where we'll have more clear guidance. When you think about the overall potential for the product, again, this goes to if you want to do the 8 years out discounted cash flow analysis of Arcimoto. I am not a financial analyst certified, so again, this is not in any way advice on how to value the company or to look at it as an investment. But that is when you look at how other companies in the space are being valued, it is based on long-term discounted cash flows. And I think that's where our statements that we are aiming to have multiple scale production Arcimoto factories cranking out, in the hundreds of thousands of units in the out years. That is the track that we are aiming to be on, and that is what the company is focused on internally and what we're communicating externally.
Got it. Where would you compare yourself?
Question?
No, it was perfect. It was a good answer. No, that's totally fine. Where on the sort of look at Tesla's history here? Now they're over 500,000 vehicles here in 2020. Where on sort of the curve relative to Tesla would you put yourself? Are we 2015 Tesla? Is this a 2012 Tesla? Are we at an 18? Where would you compare yourself?
Well, Tesla, I think they shipped in total about 2,500 Roadsters, and we've delivered in total about 150 Arcimotos. So we're like in the early part of the Roadster ramp up. The big difference is that they went from the Roadster to an entirely different vehicle with the Model S. Mm-hmm. And so our challenge is to essentially take the Roadster and just keep scaling it up versus build the Roadster and then build the Model S and then build the Model X and then build the Model 3 and then build, the Cybertruck and the Model Y and all the rest. We've got our goal is to take one platform and just keep refining and refining and refining and refining that and scaling that one platform up and up and up and up. And that platform is a much simpler platform than a full-size car. We do have, I should say though, we did make an acquisition, our first corporate acquisition recently. And so there we do see a second platform, but that's a much longer term, kind of still very much R&D project at the moment. But again, still, from a production standpoint, we have one product, one platform that we are aiming to get to very high scale production. And so rather than, the FUV today is a, $18,000 to $25,000 vehicle. The rather than coming to a new product that's a lower cost product, we are going to increase scale to get to the lower cost FUV.
Got it. Was that Tilting Motorworks?
Yes.
Okay. And
yeah,
what
so
Tilting Motorworks is the creator of Trio, the leading three-wheeled conversion kit for touring motorcycles.
Yeah, so I would argue that Tilting Motorworks was like the world leader in tilting three-wheeled vehicle technology. A guy named Bob Mile was the founder and CEO of that company. I've known him for many years, and he developed. He ultimately wanted to build a full vehicle, but really focused on the tilting methodology, and so his pathway to capital efficient entry in the market was just to create a bolt-on kit for existing motorcycles to make them much safer by adding two wheels in front, giving you better braking, better maneuverability, much better stability. And we see that technology as being really fundamental for a totally new play in the world of micromobility. So think what the FUV is to an SUV, this new product line will be to the FUV.
Wow. That's interesting. So if you add two to the front, that means you technically have four wheels then, right?
No, this is for a motorcycle, you take away the one front wheel and then you add two. So it's still two in the front, one in the back.
Like you put an axle in where that wheel is, basically.
It doesn't. No, it's a really cool tilting geometry. So it creates sort of a parallelogram between the two front wheels. Okay. So it still leans. And this is, again, for us, it's to make a much lighter weight micromobility class vehicle. In the school of disruption, if you don't disrupt yourself, somebody else will. So that's, we want to ultimately be full spectrum from the bicycle, scooter, motorcycle class vehicle, all the way up to the FUV, which is the car replacement.
That is interesting. So it's taking these and making them safer, taking regular motorcycles and making them safe. That's fascinating. So okay, what about public markets here? Why go public so early? Has it helped you raise capital? I'm sure it has. Can you speak to that a little bit? To just being public at the stage you're in.
Well, Arcimoto has always had a public mission, the mission in the public interest, and so and our customers have expressed an interest to invest in the company. So to me, being a public company makes a lot of sense. Our customers and our investors can be one and the same, and it is as you look at the opportunity for people who are really bought into a more sustainable future, that lets a much wider audience participate. And I think, from the investor side of things, I first hit Sand Hill Road in 2009 and basically got laughed out of every venture capitalist's office. It wasn't until 2015 that the company got its first real venture investment. And yet we've found that the public market retail investor really, I think, resonates much more with the company's mission and products than the high priests of finance.
Yeah, the venture capitalists, right? It looks like you went public through a Reg A. I mean, that's incredible. Most people, in most Reg A public offerings completely fail. I think it's like 80 to 90% fail rate. Do you see yourself then as, arguably yes, but you see yourself then as a success story of the Reg A public offering?
Yeah, and I think that the failure, so Reg A is just a much more efficient way of doing an S1 for a smaller raise. It's the same form as a full IPO. You just it's capped at a $50 million raise instead of being able to raise, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. And so it is a more efficient filing. It's much more efficient for smaller companies to use. I would attribute the failure of companies in that space not to the mechanism of Reg A, but to the cesspool that is the microcap marketplace, and just the number of sort of toxic financing instruments that are out there. There's a bunch of predatory organizations that go after small public companies and make it very difficult to move through that world. And so we have, and that comes down to, if you look at all the stuff that's been going on with GameStop and short sellers and that whole world. I mean, it's been a little bit of PTSD, just because we have been in that world, duking it out for 3 years and managed through, I think some measure of good execution, but I think a lot of good fortune in terms of the way that the market moved this last year towards electric vehicles, to be able to move out of that particular space. But that's where I think having Arcimoto be an example of a company that has moved through that, and I certainly hope that that some of the fallout from the GameStop experience is really a much closer examination of sort of the relationships between hedge funds, hit piece research, and things like naked shorting, and where there is an aim to create a perception that becomes a reality, and that's so we'll see.
I mean, I don't think there's a shortage of lawyers who end up filing lawsuits against SPACs. Like, for example, Matterport just announced a SPAC, and then it's like the next day they get a lawsuit. Oh, breach of fiduciary. Yeah. I mean, it really just seems like these short selling companies make a business of this.
Oh yeah, no, and again, you've got the class action legal piece of it, and then you've got the short reports, or the research that aims to dig up information, either true or false. Well, I mean, I'm going to have to plug in. My battery is. We've gone on for a good 2 hours here, bud. This is great. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Take your time. Wow, a very, very, very interesting conversation so far. I don't have many more questions, but it is true. We've had a great discussion here. Thank you for rejoining there. Look at this. We've actually got a $50 super chat here from Sturgis. Sturgis is interested in hosting an Arcimoto assembly plant. How can city commission members reach out to you for inquiries? I'm also part of Kevin's Discord. Wow. Yeah, it's matchmaker now.
Yeah, hit me up. And you can either basically I get in on if you hit up investor@arcimoto.com. I see those emails, and would be happy to chat with you about it.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah. Okay, again, our goal, I think ultimately we want to have it. So we want to get the Eugene plant is our prototype for scale. This is where we are going to learn the lessons of how do we really crank our production Arcimoto vehicles out the door at high volume at the right cost point to move the market. And then, we see an option for at least one more, but probably a couple more domestic manufacturing facilities over time. And then we think that, there are markets all over the world. If you think of Southeast Asia or Europe or anywhere, you've got, tightly congested cities, small roads, and a desire for awesome rides. So we see a lot of opportunities to grow that footprint by sort of copy paste. And,
and I just made this connection too. Isn't Sturgis, this is where the motorcycle rally is, which I feel like is like right up your alley in terms of market potentially.
I think, we have not yet been to the Sturgis rally, but that is on the map for sure. We were gonna go out this last year, but for the pandemic, and particularly now that we've got the Roadster in the product mix, we think we'll have a fun demo.
Got it. Got it. Or is that South Dakota? And I'm not
Yeah,
sure. It might be more
there are multiple
Sturgises.
Sturgii out there.
Ah, okay. Multiple. Well, hey, either way, the name. The name gives great marketing. Thank you for
Really.
that, for clarifying here on the different Sturgises. But either way, that's awesome. So here's a really good question: do we get any tax credits for purchasing an FUV, is like an electric vehicle?
Depends on where you are. So presently there is a tax credit in the state of California, a $1,500 tax credit that the Arcimoto qualifies for. The state of Oregon has a $2,500 tax credit. And we are working with our federal partners on extending the two-wheeled motorcycle EV credit, which is a 10% tax credit, to three-wheeled vehicles. And that bill, I believe, was just introduced. Ultimately what we would like to see is sort of tax a level playing field in terms of tax credits, where consumers are not encouraged to one form of vehicle or the other. Sort of like let the buyer decide what vehicle they want, and then incentivize efficiency. But that's a longer term conversation. So ultimately, I think depending on where you are right now, you could see. In Oregon, that's anywhere from a 10 to 15% tax credit. California is close to 10. And then if we get the help on the federal side, with the goal ultimately that you've got something that's at the point that we're delivering a $11,900 vehicle, if you can get that for under 10 with credits, that suddenly becomes a big market addition.
Oh, wow. So that, yeah, because you had mentioned the target is $11,900 in the future for maybe the entry price for a base model. You put credits in, you get this under 10. I mean, that seems incredibly affordable. Yeah.
Well, that 10 has always been kind of the magic number in my mind, and that came from sort of querying early on, querying potential customers, saying, how much would you pay for a really great solution for everyday driving? And there was there's a niche market at 20K, a much bigger niche market at 15, and then at 10 grand, it's sort of like it seemed like it was everybody.
You ever see yourself being open to an acquisition, just being acquired?
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part of that, but the question was acquisition.
Yeah. Would you ever? I mean, if somebody came to you and wanted to acquire your company, is that something would that be a goal? Is that like a no way, Jose? Yeah.
It has neither been a goal, nor has it been a no way, Jose. The way that we look at potential of acquisition. I mean, one, we're already a public company, so in terms of an exit path for early investors, the exit has already happened, and people can come in and out of the stock at will. We've got good volume and trading on the security at this point. So there is no long-term exit strategy beyond what we've already done. The bar for acquisition is, would a particular acquisition accelerate us on the path that we're already on? Would it accelerate our mission? And I think that there's a short list of organizations out there that I'm aware of that I think could have the potential of helping us achieve the Arcimoto mission faster by being a part of a larger entity. But it has never been, sort of sell out at all costs. It's been much more about, we will be should an acquisition offer come along, we'll look at it through the lens of, is it in the direction of, and will it move us faster in the direction of the mission?
Got it. Yeah, I asked because I know you've been researching this company. You might be familiar with Microvision. In every earnings call, they talk about how they're talking to potential suitors to expand their mission of their LiDAR technology and the other vision technology they have. But it's always a conversation about being acquired. And so you're suggesting, hey, that's not our goal. We're different from that sense. We're going to keep building. If somebody's got an offer, hey, we'll look into something. But otherwise, hey, we're going to keep going on our mission. That's not our end game, is getting acquired, huh?
Yeah, no, our mission right now is get to scale and start really delivering on carbon reduction for daily driving. But if something comes in across the transom that helps that go faster, we'll definitely look at it.
Got it. What do you think about the potential for us being in like an EV bubble that's just sort of been propped up over these last few months with a Democratic win in the House or in the presidency, and then obviously a Democratic win in on January 5th there in the Senate. Is it possible that EV valuations just publicly have gone to the moon, and maybe it's time for a reality check?
So I'm not a certified financial analyst, and so I don't feel that I'm in a position to comment on that one way or the other. What I would say, though, is what I've noticed is a growing awareness of the peril of climate change, a desire to have clean skies, and that there are rivers and oceans of capital that are looking for a way to solve those problems as quickly as possible. And the EV market is looked at as one very significant part of that solution. So is that and in the early piece of that, if you've got a very limited number of places for that river to flow, that will inflate the value of those things. I think what we're going to end up with, though, at the very least, is as we get more, sort of quarter over quarter performance of various different pieces, and as the market continues to evolve, I imagine that there will be, sort of continued rebalancing of that. But I don't think that the push for, sort of enterprise sustainability is going away, and I don't think that the push for, capital that is interested in being put to use in that realm is going away. I think it's more. I would guess it's more likely to accelerate. But again, not a certified financial analyst. Don't take that as any sort of advice.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the mission here is phenomenal. It's really, I love the idea of, hey, this is a fun vehicle that can cover 80% of your needs. It could be your daily driver. If you need, a longer range vehicle, hey, rent one instead, but own a fun utility vehicle. It's really incredible. And everything that you've talked about really aligns with that of fighting climate change, and it really explains why you're not so gung-ho on Bitcoin. Maybe it sounds like maybe there's some potential in Ethereum, but maybe clarify that in just a moment. But overall, I mean, really a really good public mission, and it seems like a vehicle that is not only fun but exciting. I'm thinking myself, I've got to put a pre-order on this thing. This seems really, really entertaining and something. Can I strap a car seat to the back of this thing? In the back?
Now, are you down in LA? Is that where are you headquartered? Yeah. So you're in our present deployment zone. So we can hook you up.
Oh my gosh. Well, we'll have to connect on that. That's exciting. Is that something? Can you get a car seat in the back of these things? Is there like a latch system?
We have not presently put car seats in the back. I think that would be a question for local regulation in terms of, can you put a car seat on a motorcycle? I'm not positive. Yeah. I think we need to do a deeper regulatory analysis to answer that question.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow. I mean, that's awesome. That's really cool. Maybe then to wrap up here, last sort of question. How long until robo-taxis are mainstream? I see some comments on this in the chat. How long are we really looking? Is this 2025? Is it longer? Is this 2030 thing?
Well, we're in some sense already there. You've got Waymo out there doing robo-taxi rides have for some time. Tesla, on my Twitter feed, I continuously see the Tesla full self-driving beta adopters out there doing ride arounds. When does that turn into? I mean, so there's full self-driving, but then there's also, when does that turn into the robo-taxi business model? And how many Tesla owners, for example, are going to be willing to put their vehicles into a robo-taxi fleet? Is that I think we're in the 2025, 2030 range. I see that range as being a likely range where we will see much wider deployment of autonomous vehicles for some sort of ride share. And I think we're looking at sort of more limited forms of that. Even sooner than that for Arcimoto. But when does it begin to have a real measurable impact in terms of percentage of trips? I think we're still out of ways. But one of the real, the real advantage beyond, safety and being able to tweet continuously while you're getting a ride is just that we'll see much higher utilization. So when you've got a shared vehicle, a car is parked for 95% of its life, just sitting there rusting and depreciating. And the hope with the robotaxi network is that you'll get much higher utilization. So anywhere from 20 to 50% utilization would be sort of a potential upper bound. And that means that we don't have to convert all 300 million cars in the US to robotaxis. You only need, a tenth of that or a fifth of that.
What's going to happen first, robotaxis or hydrogen?
Well, I think what's going to happen, hydrogen to me appears useful for a segment of particularly the heavy vehicle marketplace. But in terms of passenger vehicles, our bet's on batteries. Although ultimately we are sort of energy source agnostic. The argument about the challenges of hydrogen are generation and infrastructure for fueling. And we talk a lot about EV charging infrastructure, but 99% of the actual infrastructure for EV charging is already here. It's called the electrical grid, right? That's the big infrastructure piece. And so, and not to mention every sort of publicly available outlet for power. And that's an advantage that the battery electric has over a system that requires really entirely new infrastructure.
Yeah, no kidding. I think personally, I'm thinking hydrogen's probably a 2030 plus event because of exactly what you've described here, this massive lack of infrastructure. So that brings me to my last question. Talk to us about Galley.
The hyper director. Yes.
Yeah.
What can you say? Incredibly sharp guy.
Director. So he's on your board now.
Yeah, we appointed Galileo to the board of directors in early January, and he has been a longtime investor in Arcimoto. He has talked with me over the last several years about the company, and he's been really a fountain of good ideas, and sort of saying how can, and it's on everything from sort of merchandise to strategic partnerships. He has, in his community, he just has a constant flow of really thoughtful people sending him ideas and messages. And what about this? And hey, here's this other technology that I'm working on. And here's this electric boat that I'm building. And so he's been a fantastic matchmaker. He's had a lot of really good thoughts about ways that we can help improve our messaging and people we should team up with. And so he first, I think this was late last year, said, I want to be on the inside of the wall. I want to know what you're, what you're thinking for, future products you haven't announced. And I want to help be able to add value to those. So he said, I'd like to be on your board of directors. And I thought about it and I was like, that would be an interesting move, appointing a YouTube finance guru to the Arcimoto board. But when I thought about it, to me, the calculus made total sense.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that was a brilliant move. Very good job. Well, that is fascinating. I've learned so much in this discussion, and I so greatly appreciate your more than 2 hours now here. Any final thoughts you want to share with folks, and anything you want to say to folks who are thinking like, I don't know, should I give it a try? Should I buy it? Whatever you want.
Well, I would just say, our website once again is arcimoto.com. You can sign up for investor updates at arcimoto.com/IR. And stay tuned. We got a lot of cool stuff coming.
That's fun.
And
I'm
also,
super excited
Kevin,
about that.
thank you very much for taking 2 hours out of your Sunday morning to rap about rides.
Hey, there's no better research than talking to a founder and CEO, so I feel honored. Thank you.
Yeah, really
Well, it
appreciate
was
you
an
having me on
absolute
the
pleasure.
show, and thanks everybody for tuning in.
Perfect. Well, everybody, thank you so very much for watching this live. If you found this helpful, consider sharing the broadcast, the stream. Consider subscribing. We did stream this on Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So thank you so much for watching wherever you are watching. I appreciate you. Thank you so much, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye.